Ended up making that decision to go and join the Marines, and it was one of the greatest decisions I've ever made. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't research anything, didn't even talk to anybody, just ran into a recruiter, and I was like, I was probably the best pulley recruit ever. I was like, I want to be a Marine. I want to go to war. I want to go to combat. Where do I sign? And they were just like, like right here, like, clueless, 17 years old, 18 years old, just not asking any questions. And
Okay, so for the viewers and listeners, we're going to do something a little bit different today. I've got Brian Marshall here, former U.S. Marine, and we're gonna talk about his career, and then we're going to talk about kind of how this is what he's doing now and how it kind of correlates with law enforcement. But obviously, his heart is with the military, and but we're just gonna kind of go from there. So. Brian, can you tell the listener and viewers kind of a little bit about yourself?
so, my name's Brian Marshall, but I go as Bam. I think 99% of the people that know me as Bam, and that's old Marine Corps call sign that kind of just stuck and never went away. So I gave up and just absorbed it as my new name. But I come from a small town in upstate New York, actually a village right on the St. Lawrence River. I mean, Canada is a 5-minute boat ride for us, and that's, I grew up in just hunting, fishing, outdoors. I mean, you name it, just lived one of the best childhoods as far as just being free and just being a crazy wild kid. And as I got older, I excelled at football, and that was kind of my sport in high school. And in the Northeast, I mean, I was ranked pretty high in everything all the way through high school, and started to get serious about college and was getting recruited by some pretty good schools in the Northeast. And then obviously the Twin Towers hit my, oh God, what year was that when I was in? But I was in high school, and I saw that happen. And one of my really good friends at the time, his dad worked in the World Trade Center or the Twin Towers. And so his dad was one of the last people to actually come out before it collapsed. And he almost got killed in the pretty much the debris that was falling as they were coming out. And so that kind of hit home. It was a big deal, especially being, from upstate New York and get hit on our own turf and in our backyard. And so that kind of started a little spark with me about, okay, like, what do I have to do? And then obviously the war broke out. And that really changed a lot for me. I was going into my senior year, and I'll never forget, I was on spring break. I was with my girlfriend at the time and her family, and we were listening to the news. And this news reporter was like, we're going to cut to a reporter in Iraq, and we're going to listen, do their little over on a satellite phone. And I didn't know what it was at the time. And all you could hear is this machine gun fire, and then the brass and the links falling on the hood of a Humvee. And I didn't know what any of it was, but I knew what like that sound. And so that was kind of, I still even get goosebumps talking about to this day. That was like I have to go and do that. Like, that's my calling. And so it was pretty rough for my dad, because, he's living his varsity blues dad life through me. And I was going to all these combines, and, pretty much had full ride scholarships anywhere in the Northeast. And I came home one day and I was like, Dad, I joined the Marine Corps. And I'll never forget, he was like, go unjoin the Marine Corps. You got college ball this fall. Like, this isn't happening. And I was like, I got to do this. And I knew at the time, I never applied myself in high school. I just got through being a star athlete, and you just get pushed through. Oh, you didn't get your homework, whatever, just one of those. And so I really had that come to Jesus moment. Like, I saw all these kids ahead of me go off to college for hockey, lacrosse, football, whatever, and they all ended up back home. Every one of them came back home after the first semester, first year, and they're sitting at the same bar that their dads were sitting at, laying brick, painting house, whatever they had to do just to get by. And I was like, man, like, I got to break the circle. Like, this isn't for me. And so that's when I was like, okay, like, I'm going. And so ended up making that decision to go and join the Marines, and it was one of the greatest decisions I've ever made. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't research anything, didn't even talk to anybody, just ran into a recruiter, and I was like, I was probably the best pulley recruit ever. I was like, I want to be a Marine. I want to go to war. I want to go to combat. Where do I sign? And they were just like, like right here, like, clueless, 17 years old, 18 years old, just not asking any questions. And so that was kind of that moment where when I heard that the brass and the links, and I could just hear screaming and yelling, and it ended up being the Ma Deuce, the 50 cal, and which I ended up becoming a heavy machine gunner. So it was very familiar sound for me. Once I got in and learned, then it clicked. I'll never forget the day that I heard that 50 cal, our first day on the range. I was like, that's the gun that made me join the Marine Corps, and now I'm shooting it. And I never thought in a million years, just putting the pieces together. So I thought it was pretty cool to be able to, okay, now I'm I was an Amtracker by trade, which is the amphibious assault vehicles, which is pretty much what separates the Marines from the Army. Is obviously Marines are amphibious. And so we were the one job that separates the difference. And so on our vehicles, we have a 50 cal machine gun and a 40 millimeter grenade launcher. And they're both fully automatic, machine guns. And so, going through the training in the schools to learn all that, it was pretty cool. So to be able to put the pieces together and be like, oh man, this is the gun of why I'm standing here today. And now I'm learning the ins and outs and every piece from front to back about this thing. So it was pretty cool.
I got to ask you, so what position did you play?
Tight end, defensive end.
Tight end, defensive end.
Yeah, okay. I was really fast, and I had hands, so it just, nobody can get around me on the outside. It was just excelled at it, and and I loved football. God, I was so that was life. And no matter where I was standing on that field, I could always look to the side of my dad to be right there every single time. Just the whole packed stadium, I could hear my dad yelling at me the whole time, like just giving me pointers and tips. And so it was cool growing up with a dad. He sacrificed a lot for us. He worked out of town until, I pretty much made the senior team my sophomore year. I was starting on the football team. And then that's when he pretty much walked away from his career because he was out of town and he didn't want to miss his boys growing up. And so it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I played with my brother. He played defensive end. And so it was really cool. We were only a year and a half apart, so being on the same team, and it was good. It was a really good high school, and it's a small town, small community, so get pulled over by the cops. Be like, hey, how are we doing this weekend? How's the game gonna go Friday night? Like that kind of town. And so it's gonna be good. We've scrimmaged them really. You'd give them like your feedback and how you thought the prediction would go, and so it was small town living for sure.
Did your dad ever get over the fact that you?
Years later, no, I see it now that I'm a father and daughters, and people ask, man, what happened if your daughters wanted to join the military? And I couldn't even fathom my kids going in the military, especially nowadays. But, it took them a while and being on deployment, and I was that kid when I signed that dotted line and was like, I'm out. And I never looked back. Like I didn't call for anything. Obviously had communication or that line of communication, but didn't ask for advice or I just figured it out, and it probably cost me a lot more than bad than and then good. But, I wanted to be able to discover myself and, just grow and mature over the years. But yeah, he ended up coming around and was like, all right, now that the wartime has passed and you're not deploying anymore, he was fine with it. So I understand.
How old? You said maybe 17, 18 when is that when you started then?
Oh yeah, straight out of high school.
And what year was that when you started?
2000, end of 2003, right in the beginning of 2004.
Okay. And tell me a little bit, because I've never been in the military, so tell me a little bit about boot camp and how it was to become a Marine.
Like I said, I did zero research. I mean, we didn't have TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you could just what's it like to be a Marine? I didn't ask any questions, and I just was gone. And so on my very first experience, flew from Syracuse, New York to Parris Island, or to South Carolina, wherever we landed. And we're in the airport, and that's when I discovered what nut to butt was. And we land and we get off, and you're just this kid, and you got this envelope that has your whole life inside of it, your paperwork, and just this clothes on your back, not even a backpack, nothing. And we land, and these guys they weren't even drill instructors. These were just Marines now that I knew this. I would have been like, what? And so they're screaming nut to butt, and they're lining us up in the airport where your nose is on the back of the guy's head, and obviously nut to butt. And then you got a guy breathing on the back of your neck. And I was like, what did I do? This was not. I saw the commercials. This dude's climbing lava mountains and slaying freaking lava dragons and monsters and wearing dress blues with his little sword. I was like, where's this? This is not in the commercials of becoming a Marine. So, and then I was very fortunate. When I went to boot camp, I stood on the yellow footprints next to this kid that was same height as me, everything, and his name is Chris Reardon, and he ended up being one of my best friends to this day. I'm actually going to see him here next month with two other of my buddies. So there was four of us that were in this boot camp platoon together, and boot camp was wild. Especially then, it was still like the good old days of being able to get hazed and just messed with nonstop. So we played a lot of games at boot camp, and this is a crazy story that, every Marine's a rifleman. Everybody learns how to break down an M16, break down the bolt, know your firing pins, put it back, to disassemble, assemble like it's nothing, right? I didn't learn how to clean an M16 until after boot camp because I got hazed so bad every single day. So they would prepare you for rifle maintenance, and the drill instructor would come out and like, prepare for rifle maintenance, and everybody yells and repeats it back. I don't know what it was. My drill instructor, I guess I just had that face and just belligerent. They would just tell them to get on the quarterdeck, and that's where you get hazed. Like they're just, they just slay you, just calisthenics pretty much for hours. And I refused to break. I mean, I was supposed to be going to play college ball, so I'm in like the most physical peak performance that I've ever been in, and I go to boot camp, and they just could not break me. Like I would be hours. So every time we prepare for rifle maintenance, they wouldn't even tell me. It just got to the point where I would just walk up to the quarterdeck and just take my blouse off, take my cover off, and just stand there at attention. And then the drill instructor would walk out, look at me, and be like, go. And I would just start hazing myself. And so the whole platoon's learning how to clean rifles and the ins and outs. My rack mate, which was my best friend to this day, Chris Reardon, and he would have to take his rifle off. He knew all my combos and my locks. He would have to undo mine. He would set it up as if I was going to, because he would have to clean his. Then he'd clean mine. So he got really good at cleaning rifles. And then I ended up having to learn afterward. And so, but boot camp was one of the most incredible times of my life. You look back on the stories, the friends. It's not fun at the time. I mean, my God. I mean, the only thing that saved me is I was really physically fit and I could run for days without getting tired. So when we would have like battalion runs, I was always the fastest. So whenever there was just a random run, they would stick me in the squad bay for fire watch on the gear because like I didn't need to run because I was already the best at running. So then that was the only little breaks that I would get at boot camp was when everybody would go run and they would give me like the time off, but I was standing on fire watch. But it was a great experience. I love going to Paris Island. I mean, that's where real Marines are made, So, you have the San Diego versus Paris Island rivalry, and we always like to give it hell at each other back and forth. And so it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that time afterward, and then I built 3 incredible friends, which we're having a reunion here. Now we all have kids and families. We're all meeting in Pennsylvania here in the beginning of August, and so it's great. Like some of the best people I have in my life were from boot camp and the Marine Corps to this day.
So how long was boot camp?
3 months, I believe it is. 3 months. So
did you get to a point as when you were a kid, 17, 18 years old, do you get to a point where maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks are like, oh my gosh, what did I get into? And then you just fall into a rhythm and just go?
Maybe for most Marine or, recruits at that time, not me. I never just learned from the first time. Like I always had the challenge. Like we had this little drill instructor, and he's just this little black guy, and he was just built like a fire hydrant. He had these big old chiclet teeth, and I would just stare at him because he was really short. And I'd stare at him. He'd walk by, and he'd turn and look at me really fast, and I'd like look up, and he'd be like, and I had to bend down to him so he could scream in my ear. And like so it was like this game. Like I couldn't let them break me. It was my thing. And if I would have just been like, okay, you win, like I probably would have just been a fly on the wall. Like it was just, I never learned my lesson, and it never got easy for me because till the last day, like they had my number, all of them. And so, but it just made it that much better for me. I mean, just the time, the camaraderie. I mean, just trying to hide from drill instructors through running through racks on field days and stuff. I had to run one time. We're doing a full field day in our squad bay, and we're on the top. There's 3 squad bays, per building. And so we're the very top squad bay on the 3rd floor. And they're running around, we're cleaning everything. Well, this drill instructor grabs me and he's like, it smells like shit in here. He's like, make it smell better. And I was like, fuck, okay, what do I got to do? So he goes and I go grab these two the potpourri spray bottles. And he's like, run, don't stop till they're out. And I'm like, what? Like, how long is that going to take? So I'm just running through the squad bay, thinking like, I'm shaking them, thinking it's going to speed it up. I'm running, I'm drenched in sweat by the time these things run out. So I run up to the drill instructor and I'm like, done, sir, done. This recruit's done, sir. And he's like, bullshit. And he shakes him and he's like, let there be any left in here. I'm like, I didn't think he was going to like do everything he could to get up out of it. And he did. He slams him off the ground. He's shaking as hard as he can. And he puts it up to me and he goes, not done. Go grab two more. I was like, you've got to be kidding. So I spent a whole afternoon just running in this squad bay, just spraying potpourri just to make it smell better. And right as we go to finish, he's like, meet me in the sand pit, which I have to run all the way down, run around this giant parking lot because you couldn't cross the parking lot. And the drill instructor, if they beat you there, which the sand pit is across the parking lot, which they just walk across, and you have to run all the way down, all the way on the other side and try to beat him there. Well, obviously he beat me. So he's out there hazing me in this sand pit, and I'm just getting covered in sand. I'm rolling, doing the sugar cookie thing, all of that. And he's like, fill your pockets with sand. And I'm like, what the fuck? This isn't going to be good. Like, this isn't going to end good one way or the other. So I filled just my regular pockets. He's like, cargo pockets too. I filled I'm talking bulging full of sand. Like, he's cramming sand in my rear pocket, anything that he could put sand in. He was just stuffing it in my shirt because our blouses are tucked in. He's like, go. And I run back up, and he made me go through it. And I'm talking tidying up from field day all day. Showers, everything. He makes me run through the whole squad bay throwing sand. And I run into the showers throwing sand. I run and I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. This isn't me. Like, don't beat me up later. Because, like, those kids would get beat up then. I mean, in boot camp, you screwed up or cost more time or more hazing. Like, you got, like, jumped at night. And so I was like, it's not me. And I'm trying to like throw the sand toward the drains just to make it that much easier. Because I was that kid at some point and they're scrubbing the walls and then some asshole would come running through. But those guys would just chuck it. I mean, it'd be on the ceilings, walls. So I'm trying to like make it easier for them so I wouldn't get beat up, that night. And so it was just, boot camp was wild. It was out of control. Like, you realize it afterward, you don't like, when you're in the suck and just life is miserable. I had fire watch every single night at 0-0. The drill instructor every night, Marshall 0-0, right in the middle of the night. And that's the worst time because as soon as you go to sleep, you start to get in your little REM sleep. You're finally asleep at night. And then you get woke up in the middle of it. And then when you get off your fire watch, now you're wired from being up for an hour or 2 hours, patrolling whatever, standing there in the middle of the dark with a freaking red flashlight. Like, this is the dumbest shit I've ever done in my life. And then you try to go back to sleep and you're laying there and then I didn't get one full night's sleep the whole entire time at boot camp. And there was guys that never even had fire watch at night and they would be like, Marshall 0-0 every night. And I was like, God.
So why were you getting picked on?
Because I was just belligerent. Like I never cracked. They couldn't get me to crack. I mean, I would just go until, we ran out of time pretty much and had to move on the next thing. God, my cardio was on point. I could do some push-ups and some burpees, and God, it was miserable. But I look back on it, and it was some of the best times, like just as far as just pure comedy of just getting messed with and what the games that drill instructors come up with. They're pretty creative.
So let's talk a little bit about your progression, your career progression. So you graduate from boot camp. What do you do? What happens?
Went to MCT, which is, I wasn't a grunt, so I'm not an 0311. I was an 1833. That's my MOS. So it's Amphibious Assault Crew Chief.
Okay. Oh, okay. Because I was just going to have you slow down because I'm sure people aren't understanding
1833 is your grunt. So if you're going to be just a grunt, you go to your infantry training school right out of boot camp. But everybody else goes to their schools or to MCT, and that's kind of where you learn how to be a basic Marine. And then after that, that's when you go to your school, which is mine is an 1833 Amphibious Assault Crewman at the time. And so that's where the tanks that go in and out of the water, we drive them off the back of ships and from ship to shore is our main thing. So back in the day, World War II, not even World War II, the island hopping campaign. I mean, they had the old school, those tracked vehicles, and they're running them up on the beaches, which I got to actually go to the Solomon Islands to see where the Guadalcanal and all that good stuff. And so that was a pretty cool part of history because amphibious assault vehicles were a huge part of that battle. But yes, we learned how to run pretty much an amphibious tank and then become a heavy machine gunner. So with the 2 machine guns on it, and that was really cool. It was interesting. We're stationed right on Del Mar Beach right out of Oceanside, California. So like, if you're gonna get stationed anywhere in the Marine Corps, I mean, you can't bitch about being on Camp Pendleton on the beach. So it was pretty cool. I mean, to be able to learn a new skill like that, and the coolest part was my rack mate at boot camp, and then 2 other guys that were there that we became friends at boot camp. We all went to MCT together, and then we all ended up going to schools together, and so we spent our first 4 years in the Marine Corps, literally from the yellow footprints till 2 of them got out, and then me and then another good buddy of mine, Chris, we ended up doing another 4 years, and so we ended up serving even longer together. So we almost spent our whole careers together. Then we ended up getting different jobs our last couple of years. But
so that's kind of nice. You had a friend with you the whole time.
Whole time, which never happens. I mean, people were like, "God, how are you guys so close?" We're like, we stood on the yellow footprints together, literally. I mean, he stood right on my right side, and we all the way through until pretty much he ended up going MSG duty, and I went to the schools to be an instructor. Our last 2 years in the Corps, and that was it.
Okay, so from the training center, where do you go after that?
So the training center for me was in Del Mar, and my duty station was across the street.
Okay.
At Del Mar.
Okay.
So you either go to Lejeune, you go to 29 Palms. I mean, there's a few other places. Hawaii has a amphibious, obviously a Amtrak platoon. And so for me and then all my buddies, I mean, we literally graduated schools and we walked across the street and checked into our battalion and checked right into Echo Company. So when I got to the fleet, the actual real Marine Corps, it was 2000, it was still in 2004. That was when the whole battalion and everybody was doing like the initial push in Iraq. And so when we got to the fleet, it was a ghost town. Nobody was there. Like, only people that were left, we called them all the broke dicks, like the guys that were too hurt to deploy, and then all the short timers that were getting out of the Marine Corps. And so as a young Marine, this became our leadership, and they were just belligerent. They didn't care about anything. They were getting out. They're doing their time, checking the box, and they're out, which I didn't know it at the time. So they're partying. I mean, every night was a raging party. Then you had Del Mar Beach was a 5-minute walk for us from our barracks. The USOs having a show like every Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. And the Del Mar Beach is one of the only beaches in California you could legally drink on and bring alcohol to. So I was like calling my buddies like, Marine Corps is incredible. Like, join the Marine Corps, be an Amtracker, not knowing that everybody is deployed overseas. Like, they're doing Fallujah. I mean, they're Baghdad. I mean, they're doing all the big pushes while we're just raging at these, we're like a private or PFC or, Lance Corporals, young Marines at the time. And we're just living our life. And so, I mean, months and months go by, and we're like, this is the greatest thing ever. I mean, these guys don't even care. We don't even have vehicles. We're going down to work every day, and we're done by noon. They're cutting us out at noon. They're like, all right, got nothing for you guys. Go home, go back to the barracks. And we're literally privates in the Marine Corps, not supervised, no leadership. I mean, it was just, we had no idea what was coming. Like the storm that was brewing. Well, this is the greatest time of my life. Like, I was literally calling my buddies like, yo, dude, join the Marine Corps. I'm just partying. There's chicks everywhere on the beach. The USO, we're watching all these concerts. Like, this is the greatest time ever. Like, why is not everybody joining the Marine Corps? Not realizing everybody's deployed. And so they all start coming back. And all hell broke loose. I mean, it was horrible. So Alpha Company came back. I was already attached to Echo. And then these guys came back, and they were back like 30 days. And they got detached and attached to us. So now that obviously done deployments and grown, matured, is I could see why it was hell on us and why these guys were such assholes, is because they were over in Iraq hooking and jabbing. I mean, they got hit with several suicide vehicle-borne IEDs, the VBIDs. They lost a huge chunk of their platoon. These guys were just in the shit every single day. And they come back to a bunch of like lance corporals now at the time, where we all thought we were senior and salty because we've been in like 9 months, and dealing with a bunch of just a whole platoon of just belligerent assholes. This was the Marine Corps. And so they had a lot of work to do on us, and that's when the games began, and it was just absolute hell. I'm talking like field daying till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, like cleaning our rooms. Like they would make us, we were on the third deck, and they would make us disassemble our whole entire room. Beds, they call it a Chinese field day. Any Marine listening will know exactly, if they're old school Marines, they'll know what it is. They don't do this anymore. We had to disassemble our whole room. Beds, mattresses, closet, like the big wall lockers, however your room was set up on the third deck, which is where we were, you had to take it all down and assemble it on the basketball courts. And it was hell. I mean, you're carrying giant wall lock. People are dropping shit, just tumbling downstairs. I mean, getting hurt. So and then they would make us clean each tile on the floor, number by number. You're going to go up and scrub it, and then your roommate would go up and wipe it clean. And then, I mean, we were doing that till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. These guys were just fucking with us, just to fuck with us. And so that went on for months, but then we started getting smart. So we started calling like the area duty guard. Be like, I'm trying to sleep, and this platoon's being like, when you'd roll up there, instead of scrubbing, you'd call the duty. We'd have them on speed dial, and we'd call them real quick and be like, I'm trying to sleep. This is bullshit. Like, get over here and shut these guys up. So then like 10 minutes later, you see the van coming down the road. You're like, oh, thank God. Like, thank God, they're going to shut us down. And then duty would come walking over and be like, nope, it's too late. It's past colors, because I think at 10 o'clock or midnight, they play, the taps, and that shuts the base down. And so then, back then they would let you get away with it. Now you can't. And so that guy would save us, and they'd be like, pick it up, get back to your rooms. And we'd be like, oh, thank God, like, thank you, Jesus. Like, so we ended up getting smart. We had like secret knocks and stuff, because they'd come to your room and just knock on your door. You open it and be like, you got 24-hour post, let's go. And you're like, the hell? Like, this is Saturday. Like, and so they just grab you out of your room. So it brought us together as a platoon, because, they had 70 of us in this platoon that were all just a bunch of belligerent young assholes at the time. And what it did, just how hard they were on us during those times, it just brought us together as this tight, like, underground community. Like, we had, like, codes and secret texts and all this stuff, because that's how horrible it was for us. And so, but then they ended up, several years later, they ended up, like, apologizing. They're like, man, we're all juiced out of our minds. We all had PTSD, just got back from a deployment, and they gave us a bunch of 19-year-old kids that were just belligerent and out of control, no supervision for a year. Then that's what you get. And it definitely sculpted us into seeing, just the real side of the Marine Corps is how I look at it. Like, that was old school. I mean, those guys are all seniors. They all had combat time and trigger time. And then instead of us just listening to them, but then, and taking as much advice as we could, it was just a giant haze fest for months, pretty much until we deployed. And then once we got to Iraq, I mean, we did our time, and then we became friends. Then we were on their level. So
you had 2 deployments to Iraq.
Yep.
How long did the deployments last?
Well, we did 2 MEUs. So we took Navy ships from the Navy, picked up everybody in San Diego, and then came up to Pendleton, and the Navy pretty much floats right off the coast to California, and we drive our vehicles onto the back of the ships. They're LPDs or LSDs, I believe. I'm horrible with acronyms, but the whole stern of the ship lowers, and then they'll ballast down, and they fill the back of this boat up, back of the ship up, and we drive in, or the hovercrafts will come in from the Navy and things like that, and then we load it up, and then off we go. And so our first deployment, I want to say, was like 9.5 months, and our second one we got extended twice on, and that ended up being just short of 10.5, 11 months. Which was a long deployment for Marines. I mean, we're supposed to be like 6 months in and out. And so pretty much the Navy saved our ass. And because they would just drop us off in Kuwait. Kuwait, we dropped off the back of the ships, went into Kuwait, and then pushed into Iraq from Kuwait. And the Navy just does like this little, they call it a Mediterranean flow. They're hitting like Greece and all these countries while we're in Iraq. They're just floating, waiting for us to give us a ride back home. And then it got to the point where we were there so long, the Navy's like, we're headed home, so you guys need to get on. Like, we're going back. And so I think just logistically, the Marine Corps was like, yeah, you guys are done. So after getting extended several times, but it was fun. I mean, I love being deployed. If I could have stayed and just stayed deployed my whole life, I probably would have stayed in the Marine Corps. I enjoyed being gone. I enjoyed, I mean, I hit like 19 countries by the time I was 21. And so I got to see the world. And I mean, they say that in the Navy, but I mean, there's guys that are we'd stop in all these countries. I mean, you literally leave San Diego or Oceanside, take the ship, your first stop's Hawaii. So you pull into the harbor, which is awesome. You're doing, they call it blue-green stacked on, you man the rails, Navy, Marine, all the way around as you're pulling in the Pearl Harbor. And as a kid, you're like, what the fuck? Like, this is the cool, like, there's sea turtles as we're seeing them, like, you know, and to be able to experience coming into Pearl Harbor on a Navy ship, you know, and pulling into such a historical site, and you're standing on a giant Navy ship just experiencing this was one of the coolest experiences, for me at least. And then they're like, okay, Marines, we'll see you in 4 or 5 days. And then it was just like, poof, like, okay, turning a bunch of kids loose in Hawaii is not the smartest thing. I mean, they're getting beat up by locals, and just the Samoans are stomping Marines in left and right because they got to deal with us. You know, nobody wants to deal with a bunch of young, stupid Marines. I get it. But the thing with my buddies, the 4 of us that were at boot camp, every country or every port that we hit, we would just rent a car and get as far away from that port as possible. We would get to go experience like the culture. So wherever we were, we took like 75% of that time to experience the local culture, the city, everything like that. And then the last couple nights was just a full-on party rage fest. But we wanted to be able to experience and have souvenirs and stories and to enjoy what these different countries offer. Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, Thailand. I mean, we just every other week you're going to Kuwait. You're stopping in some country. I mean, they stopped in Dubai and they're like, see you in 5 days, and it's like you're in Dubai and you're like renting Bugattis and Ferraris and just racing them. I mean, stupid shit. I can't even believe they were letting us do this. And so, you know, being deployed I mean, that's why I joined the Marine Corps. I didn't want to sit on base and sit on penalty, even though it was great and the USO was throwing on some awesome shows. I wanted to be overseas and I wanted to just experience the world. If that was combat or not, I really didn't care. I just wanted to be able to do my part. And we got to do it, you know, and so we'd get to Kuwait. That was kind of a surreal, I can't say the word. Feeling was floating off the coast of Kuwait, you know, and knowing like, shit, this is it. Like, you know, when we deployed, we didn't get the word right away that we were going to Iraq. It was just a regular MEU, which is a Marine Corps Expeditionary Unit. And there's 2 that are pretty much floating all over the world at any time. So a MEU is 3 Navy ships and I believe a sub. You have the carrier, which is your big boy ship that has all the jets and everything on it. Then you have your pretty much attack ship, and then you have the LPDs, which is us. We call them the cockstrong ships because it was just all dudes on these ships. Grunts, recon, tankers, Amtraks, like every combat MOS or support or anything like that was on that ship. Then you have all like the headquarters, which is on the big ship, the flagship. And so for us, it was wild. I mean, fights and it was just, it's just a calm version. Being on ship was a mellow version of prison is how I would explain it. You're in a coffin rack, which is like, you have this much room. So for the first week or 2 on ship, everyone's got bruises on their foreheads because there's a light right here and you'd sit up not thinking because you're not used to it and just drill your face off this light. And then you're living in a berthing with 50 guys just, I mean, it's nasty. And then you know, we went through the Suez Canal at one point and they shut off all toilets and everything because they don't flush, so they build up. So you're going through the Suez Canal. It's 150 degrees. Nobody's able to flush toilets for like 2 days. It just piles up. And then if you hit rough seas, I mean, things are sloshing out. You're trying to shower and you're touching the curtain, which has like an inch of film on it. Like, ship life is nasty. Like, it is disgusting, but it's just like prison. You work out, you sleep, you eat, and you repeat. Like, that's it for months at a time. And you want to get swole, I mean, go on ship. I mean, it's all you're able to do. Like, it's literally like a version of prison, like a more controlled, less shankings of version of prison, and you're fed like shit. You know, we're trying to like sneak food and get more protein in you, and the Navy's eating good. We're eating like crap, and but I love ship life because it was, we got to do 2 huge traditions. Well, one major tradition in the Navy, and that's becoming a shellback when you cross the equator. So you go from a polywog to a shellback, which is like when you cross the prime meridian or whatever, the equator. Or then there's the golden shellback, which you that's when you cross the prime meridian and the equator or whatever at the same time. But when we cross the equator, it's an old naval tradition that goes back to the beginning of time that you become a shellback. And like that is one of the wildest experiences of my life. I was actually just telling my kids this the other day because they saw I have a big certificate of it, and it's like Brian P. Marshall certified, became a shellback on August, 5th date, like. And so my kids were like, Dad, what is that? Like, that's a really cool, I'll send you a picture of it. It's a really cool painting, like an old school painting where it just has like King Neptune with his trident and all this stuff. And it's just a whole day of hazing. It's a Navy hazing tradition. You have to do your time to become a shellback. And so at the time, we're like, I don't give a shit about going across the equator. I'm just here, And then, this whole tradition, the whole ship is involved. Like they find the biggest, fattest sailor on the ship and they build him this throne and he sits with this trident and he's got this giant jar of cherries, like a huge jar of just those maraschino cherries. And he'd put it in his belly button and like you had to grab the stem and pull that out. Shit like that. Like that was like one of the last things you had to do for that day. And people are probably listening like, that sounds super wrong. But when you're in the middle, they're just, the food they feed you is all over salted and they burn everything. So that they're waking you up. You're getting antiqued with like flour and it's just, you're just hazed all day. And so one of the last things is you got to go to King Neptune and ask him permission to become a shellback. And so then, thank God for my group, there was like 4 of us, and he was like, sing the Marine Corps hymn backwards. And we're all like, looking at each other like, what the fuck? Like, sing the Marine Corps hymn backwards? And he's like, sing it backwards. And as soon as he said that, I just turned around backwards and started screaming the Marine Corps hymn. And so then all my buddies turned around and started screaming it. He's like, you're the only ones that have figured that out. And he's like, congratulations, you're now a shellback. And they knight you in a way with his trident. And then you're good. And then you jump in this big, giant totes of like the sea dye, what pilots have when they crash, and that neon green. They fill this giant tank up and they like baptize you in it to certify that you become a shellback. It's an incredible tradition. I don't even know if they still do it these days. Like I feel like the way that, the military has changed so much in the last decade or better that they don't even, I would be interested to see if they actually still do it. It was one of the greatest memories of my life. Then my second deployment, we crossed the equator, went back.
Well, no, wait a minute. Before you start going in there,
yeah.
What were your responsibilities in your deployments to Iraq? What were you doing?
I was a crew chief. So my first deployment, I was actually a crewman my first deployment. But by the time we got to Iraq, IEDs were such a big thing. And so we just parked vehicles and became either ground mounts or we jumped in Humvees because what we did, we were a troop transport. We'd hold 28 guys in the back of our tank. And so if we got hit with an IED, that's a huge loss. That's a catastrophic loss. And so we ended up taking over homes and just doing our thing, just door kicking every single day. My second deployment, I was a crew chief. I was actually my lieutenant's driver. So my platoon commander rode on my vehicle. My first deployment, I was in charge of the mortar team. So whenever we'd go anywhere, the mortar team was on us. So it was pretty nice because we'd always kind of hang back and more set in positions that were like behind a defilade or behind hills, things like that, in case the mortar team needed to deploy, and they'd call them and we'd drop our ramp because our vehicles have a big ramp on the back that comes down, and they'd run out with their mortars and set up, their plates and do their thing. They'd run back to the vehicle real quick, raise the ramp up and move position. So that was my first deployment. Second one, I became a crew chief, and I operated, like I said, my lieutenant's vehicle. And so pretty much just his driver and wherever we had to go, just middle of formation, leading formation, things like that. So it was a lot of fun. I loved it. It was a great time.
Okay, so it looks like you were a crew chief, and then you go to assistant section leader, and then a platoon sergeant. Can you tell me the difference between those positions?
A section leader is when you're going to take over, so you have a whole platoon, and then they divide it into 3 sections. So
how many people are in a platoon?
Oh, God. It just varies. I wanted to say we had like 75 in our platoon.
Okay.
Average three crew to a vehicle. You got a driver, a gunner, which is your crew chief, usually in the turret operating the guns, and then you have a rear crewman. So whenever we're in the water or you have troops in the back, there you control the back of the house. Like that's, everybody listens to that crewman. They got a comm helmet on, so we're radioing like, hey, ramp's coming down. Like we pull up to like an objective or a house where we're going to dump a bunch of grunts. They're going to run and sweep, a section of a city or whatever. We'd radio back in like, hey, 30 seconds, we're dropping ramp. And so that way they're relaying in the back, things like that. And so then you start as the troop in the back. controlling it. Then you move the driver. Then you move to a vehicle commander. Then you do a section leader or assistant section leader, which is usually compiled of like 4 vehicles. And then when I wasn't a platoon commander for the fleet, that was when I was an instructor. I had my own platoon as an instructor. So
Okay.
yep.
And then you get out of the Marines in 2012.
Yep.
You do some contracting
Went
work.
straight to Afghan. My wife was not happy about that.
Why not? Here's a question. Why not stay in the military?
Honestly, I saw at that point I was a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps. I pinned on E6 in like 5 years. I had everything going for me as far as career wise, and I really saw how miserable all my seniors were. All the master guns, the gunnies, everybody ahead of me. No one was happy. I mean, they're all divorced, no relationship with their kids. They'd sit at work till 10 o'clock at night just to be there because they didn't want to be home. And so I'm one of those people like, man, if you don't like your life, you don't like what's going on in it, like change it. You can't bitch about it. You have to do something about it. And so my pivotal moment of like, I'm out of here is when I was an instructor as a platoon sergeant. We had a brand new platoon. We're teaching these kids, and we're actually teaching machine gun course. And I'm watching all my seniors, all my leadership just standing there one day, and they're standing on this forklift, and they all had their morning coffees, and they're all giggling and bouncing up and down on these forks. And I was like, God, that's my future right there. Like that's it. That's who I'm going to be. And I actually went home that day, and I told my wife, I was like, I'm done. And I just turned in a re-enlistment package to do another 4 years. I was going to career it. And I was like, God, if I don't do it now, like I need to. And I'd started a family. I had my daughter, my first daughter, and I wanted a relationship. I didn't want to just, be moving, raising, having a military brat and just traveling and never having security. So yeah, I went home, told my wife, I was like, I think I'm done. She's like, whatever you want to do, I support it. And so she's like, what are we going to do? I was like, I'll figure it out. I was like, if I got to flip burgers and In-N-Out, I don't care. Like, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get out of here.
So Brian, it's interesting listening to your story. It's like you're a star athlete and you go, nope, this is what I want to do. I mean, you're very determined in what you do. And I think it's pretty interesting. So when you get out of the Marines, how old are you?
25, 26.
Well, so to me, even more amazing. So you make the decision at 17, 18-year-old, this is what I want to do. I could go be a star athlete, and instead I'm going to go join the Marines. Then at 25, which is still, to me, very young, you go, you're looking around, you make this decision. I don't want to do that. Where do you think that comes from? I mean, I think it's pretty mature at that age.
And I was not a mature. I mean, God, I feel like I'm just maturing in life, and I'm almost 40. Like, I look at the scar on my face. Like, clearly, I make bad decisions still. It's just I'm not one of those people to sit and to like bitch about it and expect it to change. It's like, man, I started to build an animosity toward the Marine Corps. I hated the leadership. My MOS is just games. You play a lot of games and get messed with for no reason. And then I thought when I pinned on staff NCO, became a staff sergeant, that it would change, and it really didn't, as far as just how you're treated. And so I was just one of those guys that thought, man, like I don't like this. Like, it's time for me to do something that I feel like might better my life or be a little bit happier. And so I just saw the future. I didn't see all of my good leaders and everybody I looked up to. They all got out. None of them retired. They all got out at 12 years or took the early out. And I was like, I was watching that, and I'm like, man, like all the good ones go, and then you're just left with these people that can't function. No offense on people career at the military. A lot of buddies that have. And so it's just one of those things. Like I was like, now's my time. Like that 8-year mark you're on the fence. You do anything more than 8, you might as well finish your career, because 12 years into something and then leave. So I was on the fence, and so I was re-enlisting. I turned in a new re-enlistment package. I was going to career it, and then I just had that come to Jesus moment. I was like, God, if none of these people are happy, none of them were happy. Nobody came to work. We're like, God, I love my family. I love my kids. Like, let's get out of here and go spend time with your family. It was like, we're going to sit here all day and just because. Look busy. Grab a bolt and scrub rust on it. So I was like, I gotta get out. So I went and pulled my my re-enlistment package, and yeah, I shredded it and started my checkout list.
Okay, so you get out of the Marines,
Yep.
and I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because there's a main reason why I wanted to chat with you.
Yeah.
Right. So you get out and you do some stuff, and we talked about all these guys that you're starting to do some independent jobs, and you're starting to hire some veterans.
Mm-hmm.
How do you come up with the idea of this organization, Wishes4Warriors?
So, obviously, with the war and watching a bunch of my buddies just come home wounded, body or mind, right? Like just the PTSD, the TBIs, missing limbs. I mean, this was the early days where guys were just still rotting away in Walter Reed. I mean, they just were home. We had a guy on our deployment get hit with a suicide bomber, lost both his legs. He was packed full of ball bearings, and they went through the HESCO barriers and pretty much tore his whole colon out. Just took both his legs, and when we got back, we ended up getting a phone call long years afterward, but he wasn't doing too hot, and so a bunch of my buddies and we all flew out and paid him a visit, and then we don't do this part of the organization, but then it was just the boys, we're like, let's go, get out of here. We need to get you out of this basement. Like, it's dark. You're rotting here. We took him to strip clubs and just got him completely fucked up and just showed him like what it was like to be like a young Marine again. And honestly, at the time, it helped him because he was like, the boy, that's what he needed. So I saw that. And then to fast forward, I, got out, was doing my own thing. I started an executive security company, so I had the funds and time to be able to do what I wanted. Well, I was also doing some pig hunts, guiding pig hunts for a big ranch in Northern California. And I was sitting there one day with my buddy, and it's the most beautiful ranch I've ever been on in my life. We're on the top of this mountain overlooking this valley, and it's just breathtaking. And I was like, dude, I look at it. Matt McGrew, he's still part of our organization a decade later. I was like, man, why don't we have a vet here? Let's bring a wounded vet up here. And he's like, bam, you get a guy here, we'll show him the time of his life. So I had about an 8-hour drive home, and I'm just, no music, nothing. I'm just driving and thinking the whole way home. And I'm like, okay, like, this is what I got to do. I want to help out like 4 or 5 vets a year. And
how old are you at this time?
10 years ago, so 27, 28, 28.
I mean, I'm still blown away, right? I mean, you just seem to make decisions at young ages that most people wouldn't make.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was the smartest decision to start a charity at 27, but it was one of those things where I was like, man, I want to help. Like, I lost my best friend in Iraq. He joined the Army. I joined the Marine Corps, and he was deploying 2 months before me. And at that time, we're like, dude, we're going to see each other in Iraq, like thinking there's like one big base, and still not having the knowledge of what we have now. And he ended up getting hit immediately. His name was Luis Perez, and so he come from a long line of Army. His father, his grandfather, everybody mom was in the Army. So he joins the Army. He got hit with a IED immediately, and so that always weighed on me. And we grew up in the outdoors and just having the best time of our life. And so I always wanted to be able to give back. And so that was that moment when I was sitting on that mountain. I'm like, dude, I need to do this for Lewis, like help just carry on the name and do the things that we love to do as kids. Now we can provide it to veterans. And so I came home, my wife is pregnant, or fiance at the time is pregnant. And I like kicked the door in and I'm like, I want to start a charity. And she's like, what? Like, we're building this executive security company. It's doing great. Like, we really want to add this. And I'm like, I just want to help out a couple guys a year. Like, let's just start a GoFundMe, raise a couple grand, and let's just take these guys up to the ranch and just show them what it's like to be free again, to climb mountains and to overcome these obstacles and things. And so it was tough, really tough in the early days. I started this organization, started a GoFundMe for this veteran. He's a double amputee, burned half of his body, and he just wants to kill a pig. Cool. So let's raise some money. It should be pretty easy. Put it out on GoFundMe, and like we get a couple $100. I rescue this dog at the same time from this homeless guy. He's dragging it across the parking lot. It was this beautiful bulldog. It collapses from like a heat stroke in this parking lot, and me being me, I'm like, nope, like that's my dog. I took the dog. I almost got in a fist fight with this guy to save this dog. I throw it up on GoFundMe and raise like 10 grand in like a week. And I'm like, we started the wrong charity. Nobody gives a shit about wounded veterans. And this is back in, 10 years ago. Guys are still having wounds that are healing and sutures that aren't healed yet. And I couldn't even raise $1,000. And then this dog makes like the cover, like one of the highlighted features for GoFundMe, and we ended up, I think total ended up raising like we had to shut it off and we're refunding people because they just kept donating, and I couldn't even raise $300 for this vet. So it was really discouraging in the early days, but I knew like I just had to. So that's when I started driving to every gun show, hunting expo, anything that I could to just get our name and the awareness. I would drive from one place and just drive to the next state, into the next state. There was 2 years in the early days that I did 280 days on the road just promoting our business. And like I was fortunate because I had my own company at the time that was functioning, so I had the free time just to be able to grow. And then slowly but surely we started growing as an organization. And as we've grown over the years, we've evolved because the veteran community is always evolving. And so what started as like, hey, let's help out 5 guys a year and let's take them on this hunt. Fast forward 10 years, and now we have 7 programs where we're getting ready to launch a couple more that are in the beta testing now. But we have all these programs instead of just we went from the outdoors being our bread and butter of 99% of what we do as a charity. Now today, it's my smallest program. And now we're doing clinics where we're teaching veterans incredible skills and trades, seminars. We're doing couples retreats where husbands and wives are able to connect again because we're not easy to deal with. I'm sure law enforcement is the same thing. We see a lot of shit and it changes you. So a lot of these guys, we stop communicating, we're not affectionate, we have no emotion, and so it's hard on wives and it's hard on kids. And so we sit back, and as a veteran run and operated organization where I'd say 90% of my staff are wounded vets that have been part of the program and now they are the program, we listen to them. We're like, hey guy, we call them boys meetings, and we sit and we talk. Like, hey, what's going on in the community? What do we need? Man, these guys want to do things with their kids. Done, let's do it. So that's the advantage of me in this organization is I listen. My wife's the VP, and we listen to. We don't put things out to help the community. We see what the community needs, and then we build it off of that. And that's where we're always evolving. And it's like, man, right now we're looking at putting together a rafting trip for fathers and sons. So a lot of these kids they're in their teenagers now. All of our kids are hitting that teen years. A lot of guys are struggling to be able to connect with their sons. It's a different generation. You have these old school veterans, this is how I grew up. They're not understanding this new generation, and it's hard for them to be able to bond with their kids. And so we want to be able to provide that for them. Like, hey, you're going to bond with your kid after being out of service for 5 weeks, for a week, with no phones, no social media, and nothing besides team bonding experiences, or floating this river for a week and being able to get to actually know your son or know your daughter and who they are. You're not going to change your kid and make them who you want them to be. That kid's going to grow up. Like, obviously you can dictate for children, but like, man, some of these kids, their sons are just, that's the path they're on right now. Like, we can obviously help them and guide them in certain ways. So like, let's show these fathers how to do that. So it's been pretty cool to see the evolution of the veteran community. A lot of guys don't want to hunt or don't want to pull the trigger anymore. They gave that up when they left Iraq. And so it's like, okay, well, the hunting's not your thing. What is? And so we provide so many clinic, mountain biking, rafting, you name it, we do it for them. And so
just skills in terms of relationships, skills in terms of jobs.
Yep.
When you say like mountain biking and rafting and stuff, is that just kind of, hey, we're gonna take these guys out, we're gonna show them a good time, we're going to kind of reintegrate them back into society?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So through anything, spiritual retreats, a lot of these guys, and when they're signing up for them, they know like they might have questions about religion or Christ or anything like that. And so we take them into the backcountry and we'll let them, we have a program called bonfires where you're bonding over a fire. So the greatest way to bond with anybody is sitting at a campfire and just talking. We pack these guys into the backcountry and we let them cry it out and grab a log and beat a stick or a tree with it and sit there and be able to connect with like-minded individuals that have been through the same trauma and those types of experiences. So you're not just talking to some shrink from the VA. It's like, oh, my dad was this, and so I can relate, and that's what these guys are. They always like, man, my psychiatrist, his dad was a Green Beret, and he says he could relate to me. Like, so you hear that a lot. It's like, okay, like if that's what they want to be able to relate with the same type of individual who's been through the same experience or the same traumatic experience. And so what we're doing is we're connecting these guys with you have to also think this, a lot of these guys, the last time they had that group experience was with a negative traumatic experience from the military. And then they get back and poof to the winds. Then they go in their own life. So now what we're trying to do is bring these group activities again. And now instead of their last big group platoon size activities being a traumatic one, now it's a positive one. And so they're able to connect with new friends. We try to connect guys. Like right now, we have 2 guys as we speak on their way to Alaska that deployed together, and they have no idea they're on the same trip because we see the forms that they fill out. It talks about their units, times they were in, and we try to find similar ones. So these 2 guys are going to land in Anchorage, Alaska today and meet each other for the first time in like 10 years. Dude,
very cool.
Goosebumps.
Very cool.
So we're trying to just build that camaraderie in the community again. And so it's been a hell of a ride. I mean, it's been a long one and it's been wild, but I mean, it's something that I feel that the way that we're doing it is what the community needs. Instead of us being this big charity, like, hey, here's our programs and this is just what we offer, take it or leave it. Let's say you have a skill that you can provide. Civilians, we have it all the time. Civilians will come to us like, hey, my wife and I, we've been making these Adirondack rocking chairs for 25 years. We would love to teach vets how to do it. Done. We cover everything. We just had a flint knapping where guys were making arrowheads and their own custom, like not Indian style knives, like old prehistoric knives, out of all this material from a guy that used to work for me, but he's a Marine, but he's like, man, it's his hobby. It's what he's into. And he's like, I would love to teach guys this. Done. We buy the materials, we fly a bunch of guys out, run an Airbnb, and they sit around a bonfire, flint knapping, and then making arrowheads and stuff. And they had the time of their life. And it's just, so whatever anybody wants to do, or these vets come to us, and we do all these polls through social media, and we always listen. And that's kind of how we've gotten into the law enforcement side of things, is listening and seeing what the community wants or what the community is asking for, and we just try to provide it for them.
Okay, well, I want to talk about that in a second. But before we do, how many classes, how many clinics do you typically put on per year, and at this point, how many veterans are you touching and helping?
Honestly, it all goes off budget, and where we're at, we're not a giant organization, so every dollar matters for us.
And where are you getting your money these days? Where are you getting your donations?
Everywhere but grants and federal funding. We don't touch the government money because I don't want to get involved with it. So private money, just donors, sponsors. We got some incredible local companies. Howitzer Clothing, which is a huge one of ours, I think got their hat on. They're the ones, they're backing our PBL program, which is our Project Blue Lion program for law enforcement. So we do a lot of fundraisers. We have a big banquet every year. We just had an awesome event with American Construction Company, which is a local company here. They kind of adopted us in for this big event that they had. So, we grind it. We do a lot of grinding. We have a skeet shoot coming up here in 3 weeks at the Caldwell Gun Club. So just the typical basic charity things, but we kind of do it ourselves. That way we control everything, and it's just.
And I cut you off, but how many typical classes do you put on a year?
However many that we can.
Okay.
To be honest with you, so it's growing every year.
Okay.
And so like parasailing, we got a guy right now. It's like, man, I want to teach guys how to parasail. Let's go. Let's do it. Sailing clinics. We have a guy that has a fleet down in Florida. He runs a fleet for a very wealthy individual, and he's like, I want to teach guys how to sail. So perfect. It's endless for us, which is kind of scary because we don't fit a mold in a way as far as an organization. If whoever comes along or wants to provide something for somebody, as long as follows under our guidelines and it's nothing that's going to be, it's not ethical, legal, or professional and things like. We have some crazy people come up with some ideas, but we're like, maybe that's not for us right now at this moment. But, as far as if there's a need for or a want, why not? Like, we're not that like, hey, these are our 4 programs, sign up. Like, we have guys come to us all the time. We're like, man, scuba lessons. Let's teach a bunch of guys how to scuba dive. Cool. And we get everything planned out, and then we'll put it out on social media and our website, and then it just, boop, we fill it up, and we buy all the guys' plane tickets, and we cover from start to finish, and they go out and learn how to scuba dive. So,
okay.
You name it.
Okay, so.
But thousands, we've helped out several thousand veterans at this point. I mean, a lot.
Okay.
Through all of our programs.
So You and I connected before this, and we've chatted on the phone a little bit, and before we started the interview, and clearly your love is always going to be with the military.
Yep.
But at some point, and maybe you can explain how this came about, because at some point you determined that there was a need for the same type of thing within the law enforcement community. And you told me a funny story, which is, basically, hey, as I'm growing up, I don't know, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm kind of hellion and I don't really have that great a relationship with cops anyway, right?
No.
So how do you start this program, or how do you evolve it for police officers?
So, like you kind of said, I don't have the best history with law enforcement. I've run a lot. I have a 100% success rate. Knock on wood. I'm getting away from cops on my motorcycle, but I've been caught a lot, not running, but doing other dumb shit. So I didn't have always the best experience with law enforcement, but it's always been my fault, right? But during all of my time dealing with law enforcement, there's been a lot of good ones and there's been some shitty ones, and I could always remember the shitty ones, right? And so as our political environment has changed over the last several years, I've been watching this whole defund the police and just the way that cops are treated. I mean, there's shit on every day. I couldn't be a cop. I think it's one of the worst jobs on the planet as far as just mental health. And I couldn't as a veteran Marine, you go and do your deployment, it's going to come to an end. And then you get to come home and back to your everyday bust and rust, cleaning weapons, going to the range, whatever you do in the military, right? I'm looking at these cops. I'm like, God, this guy's got to do this every single day for his whole career. Just domestic, traffic. You don't know if you're going to walk up to that car and it's the last car you walk up to, right? Like, I can't fathom the level of just anxiety and stress that their bodies just deal with their whole career, right? And so I'm watching this, and then I have really good friends that were in Oregon in the Capitol, and we're talking, and they're messaging, they're taking pictures out the windows of all the Antifa, and they're there that night. They're like, man, they have no idea we're all federal agents in this building. Like, we're ready to storm. These guys come in, like, they have no idea what's waiting for them, kind of deal. And I'm just like watching this, like, what the hell? And then I feel that the law enforcement community is now our Vietnam era vets, if that makes any sense. They're not getting the praise. It's only the negative you see. Like, they're trying to defund everything when we should be giving them all the money that they need for their departments to be able to get the proper training and the gear, everything that a law enforcement officer needs. So I'm watching this, and then I was playing around this idea, like, man, we should, maybe one of these days we can get into helping law enforcement, and just something little. And then when it all kind of came together was when that female cop pulled out her pistol instead of the taser and put those rounds in that guy's chest. I have, social media following, and so I had hundreds of people, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? What are your thoughts on this? And I responded to them all saying, like, you train how you fight. When I was in Afghan or deploying, going overseas, we worked a lot with law enforcement officers, and it was a shit show. I mean, their weapons handling skills they were always the ones getting yelled at, kicked off the range. They're NDing into the dirt, or it was just wild dealing with cops. We hated working with law enforcement officers because they were always the worst. But then you don't realize, like, these guys aren't getting, like, that's all we do is shoot. That's all we're doing is training. I mean, it was just thousands around. I mean, you're melting barrels off guns and spending weeks picking up brass. Like, this cop probably hasn't shot in 6 months. And so you don't look at that at the time. But then once, obviously, I was growing, maturing, dealing with law enforcement, I started seeing this. So it kind of sparked the idea, like, how can we help? We have great companies that want to help us, whatever we're doing for the community. And then once that woman pulled that pistol instead of her taser, my theory was, like, train how you fight. And I would watch it on the range. These cops had 2 different duty belts, and they'd draw with the taser, and then they'd practice drawing with the firearm, but all from the same hand. But when they're on patrol, however they set their rig up. So my thought was, like, man, that was just muscle memory. She just reached, instead of training pistol left or taser left or whatever it was, that's just my theory, right? And so I was like, we got to provide something for these men and women that are out there that they don't have that PD money, that are getting training every quarter or every month or whatever it was. So we started really throwing around the idea. And so, like I mentioned Howitzer earlier, they're a great company that backs us on pretty much they just want to help anywhere they can. And so we went to them, was like, hey, we're thinking about starting this Project Blue Lion. We thought Lion was just perfect thing for, just to represent a law enforcement community instead of Project Blue or the PBL. We wanted to just show like, hey, like these guys are just, they're grinding it out. They're warriors, but they're not getting the help. They're not getting the credit. They're not getting the support that they need. So we went to Howitzer. We're like, this is what we want to do. They're like, let's do it. We're going to back you guys 100%. So how do we want to, what's our first goal in this? We're like, we feel for us, and there's a lot of support for law enforcement ish. Not as much for the veteran community is getting, but we're like, hey, these guys provide this. We kind of did our homework. We're like, we want to provide just basic training. Like that's the basics. Let's go back to the drawing board and what do they need? And so what we did is we started reaching out to some of the best instructors that we could find in the country. I mean, JJ Rakraza, he's an unbelievable shooter. But we started talking to these instructors like, hey, if we put this program together, can you slot, if we pay for the whole entire course, can you give us blocks of your training classes? And they're like 100%. And so then we start talking to more instructors. And so we start finding instructors all over the country, from Ohio to Florida, California. I mean, we're only 2 years in and we have just under a dozen instructors right now, and we're growing every day. We want to make sure they're the right instructors and qualified and that can keep up with the amount of guys that we're sending. And so we started slowly building this and vetting these instructors to be able to help law enforcement officers. And so what that does is now, if you are an active duty law enforcement officer, you go onto our website and you just fill out the program and to apply for your PBL program, which is Project Blue Lion. And so you go on, fill it out, and we vet you, make sure you get right credentials, you're still active duty, and then you pick an instructor that's closest to you. We don't pay for travel, not yet at least. And so you go, and so what's happening is these PDs are getting smart, and what they're doing is they're sending their training instructors to get update pistol, carbine. A couple of instructors are running like QBC courses, tactical driving classes, which isn't a lot. We don't know how long that'll go on for. It's just up to the instructor. But basic pistol, carbine, but they're advanced courses, and we have different tiers to them. And these guys are coming back, and these cops are like, holy shit, like, that's been incredible. And so now what we're looking at doing is just starting to send the instructors to these departments, or departments are bringing out, if they're close enough, their whole department, and we're running them through like a weekend course on just from basic to advanced pistol carbine classes. And so that's kind of how it started. And so July is going to be 2 years for the PBL program, and we just broke the 2,700 mark on law enforcement officers that we've helped in 2 years.
Wow.
Yep. So
Awesome.
We're about to hit that 3,000. We'll hit 3,000 law enforcement officers by the end of this year for sure.
Okay, so Brian, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, either military, police, whatever else, two things. One is, if somebody wants to get a hold of your organization and help you in any way possible, either monetarily or whatever they can do for you, how would they get a hold of you?
Right online's the easiest. We have forms for everything. If you want to volunteer, which we don't have a ton of volunteer work because we send a wounded vet, a combat service vet with every trip as far as the organization. That's your mentor or the leader on that one. But you can go right on to Wishes4Warriors.org, right on our website, and you could, if you have a service, anything you could provide, you could go right on there and fill out an application. It just tells us everything. It's super simple. Every question ever known that you could ask or we're going to ask you, they can go right on there and fill everything out, and it kind of gives us the basis on that. Social media, Wishes4Warriors on Instagram, and we answer everything on that. So if you're law enforcement or a veteran that's looking to utilize the program.
Okay. And for the listeners and viewers, I will make sure that the website as well as the telephone number is in the description of the video. And for the listeners, I'll put this in at the end of the video so that you have the website as well as the telephone number as well. Brian, I really appreciate the interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.